In just 17 minutes, Michelle Obama shattered 200 years of courtroom tradition, left Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett speechless, and forced her to admit she was wrong. It started as an open attack in the highest courtroom in America. A powerful justice trying to humiliate a black woman she thought was out of her league. But what happened next exposed hidden racial bias, shook centuries-old traditions, and turned the entire case upside down. The scene opens not inside the hushed solemnity of the Supreme Court, but in living rooms across America. In homes filled with the quiet hum of ceiling fans and the faint scent of coffee, clusters of older folks, silver-haired couples, retired lawyers, veterans of 1,000 news cycles, lean closer to their televisions, eyes wide. The Supreme Court's live broadcast, normally background noise fit only for insomniacs or law students, suddenly pulses with electric energy. Someone chuckles and mutters, "I thought court TV was boring until today." Now, I'm half expecting the bailiff to start handing out popcorn. A woman in a bright floral blouse leans forward, eyes sparkling, and adds, "Lord, they should sell tickets for this showdown." On the screen, cameras zoom in for a dramatic close-up of Michelle Obama, standing tall at the podium in her black tailored suit, her expression serene, almost regal, despite the weight of history pressing down around her. The audience at home can't help laughing gently at the sheer contrast between Michelle's calm face and the swirling speculation exploding on cable news. Commentators yammer breathlessly about an unprecedented clash and a showdown between two titans of law. One older man raises a mug of coffee and toasts the screen, whispering, "Get 'em, Michelle." For them, this is no longer just a legal proceeding. It's must-see television, a battle that feels personal, as if justice itself hangs in the balance. The laughter is tinged with nervous energy, because deep down, even in their jokes, they all know that what's coming next could change everything they believe about power, race, and the law in America. Inside the Supreme Court chamber, sunlight filters through the tall windows, falling in golden pools across red velvet curtains and marble pillars. Michelle stands alone at the podium, her notes neatly stacked, fingers lightly resting on the wood, as if drawing strength from it. For a moment, there's a calm so thick you could almost touch it, the kind of silence that's less peaceful than it is charged with expectation. Then Justice Amy Coney Barrett leans forward, her dark eyes narrowing, her voice slicing through the hush like a surgeon's scalpel. "Ms. Obama," she begins, with a measured politeness that feels colder than an open insult. "Your constitutional argument directly contradicts precedent in at least 3 significant Supreme Court rulings. I'd suggest you familiarize yourself with Harrington versus Davis before presenting such theories in this court." The words hang in the air, sharp and deliberate, as if Barrett has just laid down a challenge, designed not merely to test Michelle's legal knowledge, but to expose her as unworthy of standing in this sacred chamber. There's something in Barrett's tone, a flicker of disbelief, almost a sneer, that suggests an unspoken subtext. How dare you, a black woman, presume to argue constitutional law before the nation's highest bench? Michelle opens her mouth slightly, but for one heartbeat, she says nothing, her dark eyes holding Barrett's stare, the silence stretching between them like a drawn wire. Around the courtroom, subtle reactions ripple outward. A clerk lowers his eyes, pretending to study his papers. One justice shifts uncomfortably. A few journalists exchange quick, sharp glances. Even the ornate carvings above the bench seem to lean forward, listening. It's not merely a legal disagreement. It's the echo of a centuries-old tension. Who belongs here and who does not? The tension spikes so high that in homes across America, those same older viewers stop mid-laugh and lean closer, faces serious now. For in Michelle's silence, there's a question hanging in the air. Will she crumble under Barrett's attack, or will she unleash something no one in that courtroom is prepared to handle? Inside Michelle Obama's mind, a very different scene is unfolding than the poised silence visible to the world. Though her face remains serene, her inner voice is a torrent of sarcastic prayers and determined pep talks. "Lord, give me strength, and maybe a glass of water," she thinks, fighting the urge to roll her eyes. She shifts slightly, feeling the weight of every gaze pressing down on her shoulders, yet a sly voice whispers in her head, "Girl, you didn't come all the way to the Supreme Court to fold like a cheap lawn chair." The absurdity of it all makes her want to laugh, even as the stakes could not be higher, because here she is, Michelle Obama, daughter of a Chicago water pump operator, a black woman who's navigated corridors of power for decades, being treated like a clueless amateur by one of the sharpest judicial minds in the nation. She remembers the millions watching on television, the older folks in their living rooms, the countless little girls whose eyes are glued to the screen, believing that brilliance has no color. And as the marble pillars seem to lean in closer, as if waiting for her answer, Michelle feels a small, almost rebellious grin tugging at the corner of her lips. Because deep down, she knows something Justice Barrett doesn't yet realize. This fight isn't anywhere close to over. Meanwhile, the silence from Michelle begins to take on a dangerous life of its own. A single second stretches to 2, 3, 5, and an anxious murmur flickers through the packed courtroom like wind through dry leaves. A woman seated near the front whispers urgently, "Is she choking?" A clerk glances up, eyes wide, while one of the bailiffs seems ready to leap forward with a bottle of water. The reporters seated behind their laptops exchange worried glances as fingers hover over keyboards, itching to break the news that Michelle Obama, the formidable public figure, might be unraveling under pressure. On cable news, live feeds catch commentators scrambling to fill the vacuum of silence with speculation, their voices rising in a blend of disbelief and barely concealed glee. "Folks, we may be witnessing a complete collapse," one pundit exclaims, as a chyron flashes across the bottom of the screen. "Crisis at the Supreme Court." Obama stunned into silence. Another analyst, leaning in conspiratorially, says, "This is why you need specialized constitutional lawyers for cases like this." The narrative threatens to spin out of control, as if decades of Michelle's career might be obliterated in a single moment of hesitation. In the courtroom, every breath seems held hostage by what she might, or might not, say next. Her entire reputation teeters on the razor's edge, the audience waiting to see if Michelle Obama, once underestimated, will confirm her critics' worst suspicions, or deliver a blow so devastating that it will echo through the marble halls of justice for generations to come. For a moment that seems to stretch on forever, the courtroom breathes as one, caught between the thundering silence of Michelle's pause and the unseen tension rising like a tide. Then, Michelle clears her throat gently, the sound echoing off marble columns, as if she's simply announcing the start of a book club meeting instead of a legal counteroffensive. She lifts her chin, voice smooth and unwavering, and says, "Well, thank you for that question, Justice Barrett." Somewhere in the rows behind her, a stifled snort of laughter escapes from a law clerk who instantly claps a hand over his mouth, realizing where he is. The narrator's voice slices through the quiet with wry amusement. "It's always polite to thank someone for trying to publicly destroy you." In homes across America, older viewers chuckle in unison, leaning forward in their chairs because they recognize that particular brand of polite steel, an older black woman who's about to prove that respect doesn't mean submission. Michelle's calm tone seems almost absurd under the weight of the courtroom's gravity, as if she's about to discuss the weather instead of demolishing a Supreme Court justice's argument. Yet behind her measured words lies a simmering heat, the sense of a storm gathering force just beyond the horizon. Because while Justice Barrett might believe she's set a perfect trap, Michelle Obama is already sharpening the keys that will unlock it and turn the entire courtroom upside down. Then, with a barely perceptible inhalation, Michelle begins her counterattack, and the transformation is instantaneous. Her voice takes on a rhythm like a litigator, in perfect control of her instrument, calm, confident, yet carrying the sharp precision of a scalpel, slicing through legal tissue. "Justice Barrett," she says, eyes locked on the bench above her, "I'm quite familiar with Harrington versus Davis, and if you'll permit me, I'd like to explain why it actually supports, rather than undermines, our position today." She doesn't even glance at her notes as she dives headlong into the citations, pulling passages and page numbers seemingly out of thin air, reciting exact language from the court's opinion that speaks directly to the balance between federal regulatory interests and state sovereignty. Her words weave together a narrative so precise and compelling that even Barrett, who'd moments before been so eager to dismiss her, leans forward slightly, her expression shifting from cool challenge to reluctant curiosity. Michelle's voice remains steady as she continues. What's often overlooked, Your Honor, is Justice Kavanaugh's controlling concurrence, which set forth a three-part test that directly applies to our facts. She pivots effortlessly to mention Westmoreland v's United States, an obscure decision that barely earned a footnote in law school casebooks, yet Michelle quotes from it as though she argued the case herself. Each sentence falls like a hammer wrapped in velvet, demolishing the notion that she lacks constitutional chops. The courtroom falls so silent that even the scratch of a pen seems deafening. Barrett's eyebrows lift, a subtle but unmistakable sign that the justice has not only been caught off guard, but is now absorbing the possibility that the woman she tried to corner might actually be a legal force to be reckoned with. And while cameras catch the flicker of surprise in Barrett's eyes, Michelle stands unwavering, a faint, resolute gleam shining in her gaze as she holds the room, proving in a real time that brilliance has no color and that no one should underestimate Michelle Obama. For a moment, the courtroom transforms into an unscripted stage play, and the silent reactions of the justices become the real performance. As Michelle reels off precedent after precedent, connecting complex legal doctrines with a fluidity that makes law clerks look like amateurs, a ripple of disbelief travels across the bench. Justice Allo, known for his usually impassive poker face, suddenly looks like he's just bitten into the sourest lemon in existence, his lips pursed so tightly they nearly disappear. Justice Kagan, ever the scholar, leans forward in her chair so fast that her pen slips from her fingers, clattering onto the desk below with a sharp, embarrassing clink. A bailiff nearby jumps at the noise, eyes wide. The narrator's voice slides in with dry humor. Justice Allo looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, and Justice Kagan nearly dropped her pen. Meanwhile, the gallery struggles to maintain decorum. One older woman in a powder blue suit quietly fans herself as though she's witnessing a Broadway thriller instead of a federalism case. The humor is subtle but electric, a collective realization rippling through the courtroom that Michelle Obama has just flipped the narrative, leaving some of the brightest legal minds in the country blinking in astonishment. Even the marble statues seem to lean forward as if desperate not to miss a single word of the intellectual duel unfolding beneath them. But Justice Amy Coney Barrett is not a woman who concedes ground without a fight. Her fingers drum lightly on the mahogany bench as she gathers her thoughts, eyes narrowed, and then she leans forward, voice low and precise. Ms. Obama, she says, suppose federal and state laws conflict so deeply that compliance with one makes violating the other inevitable. How, in your view, should the court resolve a clash where federal regulations demand actions that state constitutions explicitly forbid? The words drop into the room like a stone thrown into still water, sending ripples of tension in every direction. The hush is absolute, the air suddenly heavier, as though everyone has forgotten how to breathe. Even the mechanical whir of a courtroom camera seems too loud. This is no ordinary question. It's a hypothetical so tangled, so exquisitely crafted, that law professors will one day dissect it in lectures, and students will lose sleep trying to parse its implications. From the media box, legal commentators lean closer to their microphones, voices hushed with an edge of glee. This is where Michelle's going to crack, one whispers, half in awe, half in anticipation of blood in the water. It's a question designed not just to probe constitutional theory, but to test whether Michelle's earlier brilliance was merely memorized citations or the sign of a truly formidable legal mind. Around the courtroom, some justices shift in their chairs, eager to see whether this black woman, standing alone beneath the immense seal of the United States, will falter under the weight of an intellectual challenge meant to bring even seasoned Supreme Court advocates to their knees. And for one breathless instant, as every eye fixes on Michelle Obama, the future of the case, and perhaps a piece of American legal history, balances on the edge of her answer. There's a fleeting pause as Michelle Obama stands beneath the glare of courtroom lights, her eyes locked onto Justice Barrett's intense gaze. The hush in the chamber is absolute, and then, in a move so unexpected it practically sparkles, Michelle lets out a soft laugh, a sound as smooth as polished wood. A sly grin curves across her lips as she leans slightly forward and says, "That's an excellent hypothetical, Justice Barrett." Her voice carries just the right balance of respect and steel, the same voice she once used to calm a restless crowd or hush a room of political titans. Somewhere in the gallery, a low chuckle ripples through the audience, quickly stifled as people remember where they are. The narrator slides in, dry and amused. "That's lawyer speak for, you're about to get schooled." Across America, older viewers watching from living rooms sit up straighter in their armchairs, grinning because they know exactly what that grin means. It's the grin of a woman who's been counted out before, who's been told she doesn't belong, and who's moments away from proving everyone wrong in spectacular fashion. Without missing a beat, Michelle launches into her answer, her words crisp and deliberate, each syllable radiating command of the law. "Justice Barrett," she says, "your hypothetical raises a critical tension between state constitutional sovereignty and federal supremacy. However, this court has addressed precisely that conflict before, most notably in the opinion you authored in Wisconsin Manufacturing Association versus EPA in 2018. A sudden ripple of motion flashes across the bench as Justice Barrett's eyes widen, her poised exterior fracturing for the briefest instant. She blinks, as if momentarily stunned, because no advocate standing at that podium has ever had the audacity or the brilliance to weaponize Barrett's own judicial writings against her. Michelle continues, voice gaining momentum like a river breaking free of winter ice. "In that opinion, Your Honor, you wrote that when regulatory frameworks create irreconcilable obligations, courts must examine which sovereign possesses primary constitutional authority over the specific subject matter. That framework, respectfully, is precisely the roadmap that guides how to resolve your hypothetical." Gasps ripple through the courtroom, soft yet unmistakable, as law clerks scramble to flip through binders and digital databases, seeking the exact language Michelle has just quoted from memory. The justices' exchange looks ranging from astonishment to grudging admiration, while the gallery leans forward, utterly captivated. Justice Barrett's lips part slightly, and she says, with a mixture of disbelief and wary respect, "Are you quoting my own opinion against me, Ms. Obama?" The question hangs in the silent chamber like a single chime, echoing through a cathedral. Michelle simply tilts her head, the glint in her eyes both fierce and kind, and answers, "Yes, Justice Barrett, because your reasoning perfectly supports our argument today." The air in the Supreme Court feels charged, as though lightning has struck the marble floor, and for a moment, even the ancient carvings above the bench seem to regard Michelle Obama with newfound reverence. What began as an attempt to break her has become a masterclass in constitutional law, and a moment destined to be replayed in legal circles, classrooms, and news broadcasts for years to come. A pulse of stunned silence still reverberates through the chamber in the wake of Michelle Obama's dazzling legal counterstrike, when suddenly, Justice Allo, a man better known for his scowling silence than comedic timing, leans forward, his deep voice booming out across the hushed courtroom. "Well," he blurts, shaking his head slightly, "this is better than any reality show I've ever seen." His words hang in the air for a split second, as though everyone present is waiting to be certain they actually heard a Supreme Court justice admit he's being entertained like an ordinary viewer at home. Then, as though a cork has popped, laughter ripples through the gallery, bubbling up despite the solemn surroundings. Even a few of the other justices can't help letting small, startled grins creep across their faces, and one law clerk bites down hard on his lip, trying not to giggle audibly. The tension in the room doesn't vanish, but for an instant, it transforms into a communal moment of release, a shared acknowledgement that they are witnessing something extraordinary, a legal duel so sharp and unexpected that even the highest judges in the land can't keep a straight face. Out in living rooms across the country, Older viewers slap their knees and roar with delight, shaking their heads and declaring, "Now, this is what I call must-see TV." Yet beneath the humor lies a deeper electricity, because everyone in that courtroom knows the laughter is just the surface ripples on a stormy ocean, and that Justice Alo's quip has only made the next moment more deliciously uncertain. As the echoes of laughter fade, the courtroom seems to hold its breath once more, and all eyes swivel back to Justice Amy Coney Barrett. She sits very still for a moment, her gaze pinned on Michelle Obama, fingers steepled thoughtfully in front of her. When she speaks, her voice is different, lower, less edged, carrying the careful weight of a person who knows the battle has shifted beneath her feet. "Miss Obama," she says slowly, every syllable measured, as if she's tasting the words before releasing them. "Your reading of these precedents is certainly creative." The word hovers between them, loaded like a coiled spring, and a few people in the gallery tilt their heads, trying to decipher whether it's meant as an insult or the first begrudging nod of respect. The narrator slides in, dry as ever. Translation: "I'm not admitting I'm wrong, but I might be wrong." Barrett's dark eyes narrow slightly as she continues, her tone losing the razor-sharp chill it held at the start of this hearing. "However," she adds, her voice softening just a fraction, "I'd like to understand precisely how you believe this court should reconcile your proposed framework with the existing boundaries established in Denison." Around the courtroom, subtle shifts betray the rising tension. Law clerks begin scribbling furiously, scribes lean closer over their keyboards, and even Justice Alo seems to sit up straighter, eager to hear how this intellectual battle will evolve. For in that single question, polite, precise, and cautiously open, lies the ultimate sign that Justice Barrett, once poised to dismiss Michelle as unprepared, now sees her not just as an advocate, but as an intellectual equal worthy of debating the very contours of constitutional doctrine. And while Michelle stands steady and silent for just a heartbeat longer, a faint, knowing smile touches her lips, because she recognizes the subtle tremor beneath Barrett's careful words. It's the tremor of a powerful mind, conceding, if only silently, that it has met an unexpected match. As the Supreme Court session breaks for a short recess, the marble halls buzz with a kind of electricity usually reserved for election nights or major sporting events. Meanwhile, far beyond the courthouse steps, a different storm is brewing online. Social media explodes into a frenzy the instant news outlets blast out clips of Michelle Obama quoting Justice Barrett's own words back at her. Within minutes, the hashtag number pulling a Michelle surges to the top of trending lists, pinging across millions of screens from smartphones to giant TV monitors in senior centers and suburban living rooms. Memes begin popping up like wildflowers after a rainstorm. One shows Barrett looking wide-eyed and stunned, captioned, "When your own homework comes back to bite you," while another features Michelle, adjusting her glasses, a smug grin on her face, beneath the words, "Calm, cool, constitutional killer." The narrator drops in dryly, voice edged with amusement. Even people who can't spell federalism are suddenly experts online. Talk shows scramble to book constitutional scholars overnight, while older viewers gather around laptops, sharing memes and proclaiming, "This is the best courtroom drama I've ever seen." Yet beneath the laughter lies a new undercurrent of suspense, because the very spectacle that has turned Michelle into a hero in the public eye is also about to make her an even bigger target. While America revels in the online circus, inside the towering walls of the Supreme Court, the stakes are shifting yet again. The Solicitor General, now renamed Theodore Vance, a man with the crisp demeanor of a banker and the eyes of a chess master, paces in a small side chamber, his team clustered around him like anxious satellites. His voice is low, but urgent, as he flips through binders, pulling up case law, diagrams and slides, each sheet of paper rustling like dry leaves. "We have to undercut her," he snaps, tapping a page fiercely. "If we let this narrative stand, the court might actually build a new federalism standard around her argument." In the gallery, whispers spread like wildfire as news reporters check their phones and read out breaking headlines. Federal government scrambles to save case after Michelle's surprise victory. Across the country, the same older viewers who'd been laughing moments earlier now sit forward in their chairs, eyes sharp, sensing that the battle is far from over. The legal commentators on TV lean closer to their cameras, voices tinged with both excitement and dread. This isn't done yet, one warns. The Solicitor General is a heavy hitter. If anyone can dismantle Michelle Obama's argument, it's him. Back in the courtroom, as the justices begin returning to their seats, there's a new tension in the air. A quiet sense that while Michelle has won the first battle, the war itself is shifting shape, preparing to erupt into an even bigger fight that might decide not just this case, but the entire balance of power between federal authority and states' rights for a generation to come. Deep inside the hushed recesses of the Supreme Court's side chambers, Michelle Obama stands before an antique mirror, the mahogany frame carved with eagles and olive branches, as centuries of legal tradition seem to breathe around her. She takes a long, steadying breath, adjusts her jacket, and mutters under her breath with the crisp authority of a woman who has faced down more than her share of giants. Girl, they want round two? Give 'em round two. A flicker of a grin flashes across her face, eyes glinting with that spark only true fighters possess. The same look she once wore on a debate stage, on campaign trails, in community centers, and now here, in the ultimate arena. The narrator cuts in, dry and playful. This is why Michelle doesn't skip breakfast. Back in homes across America, older viewers roar with laughter, nodding in admiration, because they know that no good battle is fought on an empty stomach, and no great woman ever lets herself be counted out just because the fight got harder. Michelle gives her reflection a faint wink, squares her shoulders, and steps back toward the chamber doors, ready to transform the courtroom into her own battlefield one last time. Moments later, Michelle strides back into the Supreme Court chamber, every footfall echoing across the marble like the beat of a war drum. She reaches the podium, places her hands lightly on either side, and lets her eyes sweep the room, capturing the rapt attention of every justice, clerk, and onlooker. When she speaks, her voice rings with the calm resonance of authority earned, not granted. Justices, she begins, her tone measured yet ablaze with conviction. In light of the conflicts raised today, I propose this court adopt a new three-part standard for evaluating federal regulations that intrude upon traditional state functions. Her words fall into the silent chamber, like stones into still water, creating ripples of possibility. Justice Barrett leans forward, eyes narrowed with intense focus, no longer the dismissive inquisitor, but a jurist genuinely searching for clarity in the law. Michelle continues, without glancing at a single note, outlining her framework with precision. First, any federal regulation must be narrowly tailored to its constitutional objective. Second, it must minimize undue administrative burdens on state governance. And third, it must preserve essential state sovereignty unless Congress has spoken with unmistakable clarity. The justices listen in almost reverent quiet, the tension so thick it vibrates in the very air. As Michelle speaks, her voice grows softer, but infinitely more powerful. Because justice, brilliance belongs to no race, no gender, only to the truth. For one crystalline moment, the courtroom seems frozen in time. Even the elaborate carvings of past justices, staring down from their marble perches, appear to lean closer, as if to hear the final echo of her words. The silence is profound, filled with the weight of history shifting. Outside, news cameras and pundits wait breathlessly, unaware that inside these walls, a black woman has just redefined the battlefield of constitutional law and left her indelible mark on the conscience of the highest court in the land. The echoes of Michelle's closing words still reverberate through the chamber as the justices rise, robes swirling like black waves, and disappear behind the red velvet curtains for private deliberations. What follows is pure, frantic chaos. Law clerks, those normally invisible engines of the Supreme Court, are suddenly everywhere, darting through hallways with towering stacks of briefs, legal pads, and hastily printed court opinions. Papers spill from their arms, like confetti at a New Year's Eve party, while whispers of frantic legal arguments ripple across the marble corridors. One young clerk staggers past, glasses askew, mumbling case names and page numbers under his breath as though reciting a prayer. Another bumps into a colleague, sending a rain of legal documents fluttering to the floor while both gasp in dismay. The narrator slips in with wry humor, voice dry as parchment. Clerks everywhere wishing they'd called in sick. Meanwhile, back in homes across America, older viewers chuckle and shake their heads, many remembering younger days when they too worked jobs where the boss's big decision meant all-nighters and emergency coffee runs. It's chaos laced with comedic relief, a sharp, human contrast to the solemn marble walls. And yet, beneath the laughter, thrums a universal question. What will the justices decide after witnessing Michelle Obama's extraordinary stand? When the justices finally return, the hush that falls over the courtroom is deeper than any silence that has come before. Justice Barrett, her face thoughtful and surprisingly gentle, leans forward and folds her hands atop the bench. Her voice, when she speaks, is steady and clear, yet carries a subtle note of humility that wasn't there before. Miss Obama, she begins, her eyes meeting Michelle's across the cavernous room. Your arguments have deeply informed our understanding of this issue. Your interpretation of precedent and constitutional principles has provided this court with significant guidance. The words hang in the air like rare jewels, shining under the courtroom lights, and for a heartbeat, no one moves, as though afraid that even breathing might break the spell. The narrator, dry as ever, cuts in with perfect timing. Translation: Michelle just rewrote Supreme Court law. A slow murmur of astonishment rises in the gallery as the meaning settles in. Across America, older viewers feel goosebumps prickling along their arms because they know they've witnessed history in real time. Justice Barrett continues, acknowledging the possibility of refining existing frameworks in light of the principles Michelle so eloquently defended. There's no outright admission of defeat. After all, the Supreme Court rarely deals in such absolutes. But there's no mistaking the quiet respect in Barrett's tone, nor the weight of her words that signal a seismic shift in the court's thinking. Michelle stands tall and calm, though a glint of quiet triumph flashes in her eyes. In that moment, the towering pillars and engraved names of history surrounding her seem to glow with a new kind of light, as though the walls themselves recognize that, today, the law bent ever so slightly toward justice, not merely because of precedent, but because one woman refused to stay silent. And the world, watching breathlessly, understands that this was more than a legal victory. It was the day brilliance spoke truth to power, and power finally listened. The ripple effects of Michelle Obama's triumph don't stop at the marble steps of the Supreme Court. By the following week, news networks across America are tripping over each other to book her for interviews, while talk show hosts gleefully tease specials titled, "Next week, Michelle Obama joins us for cooking with constitutional law." In studio audiences, people cheer and wave homemade signs that read, "Federalism Queen." Meanwhile, the internet becomes a sprawling carnival of creativity. Memes flood every social feed, from senior citizens' Facebook pages to younger relatives' group texts. One viral favorite shows a startled Justice Barrett frozen mid-expression, eyes wide and brows arched, captioned simply, "Barrett's shock face, when your own words betray you." Another meme features Michelle coolly adjusting her suit jacket beneath blazing text, "Did I stutter?" Older viewers across the country laugh until tears run down their cheeks, delighting in how their once stuffy perception of Supreme Court arguments has morphed into an unexpected cultural phenomenon. And yet, amidst all the comedic chaos, there's an unspoken pride shimmering through it all, a sense that they've just witnessed not only a historic legal battle, but the rise of an unexpected celebrity whose brilliance belongs not to politics alone, but to the very heart of justice itself. Yet as the lights fade on the cable news studios and the laughter ebbs away, a deeper resonance remains, vibrating quietly beneath the memes and the headlines. The narrator's voice returns, softer now, threaded with a gravity that settles like gentle weight across the listener's shoulders. One day in court proved that brilliance has no color, and that justice must always listen, even to the voice it once tried to silence. Outside the Supreme Court, the afternoon sun glints off marble columns as Michelle Obama steps out onto the wide stone steps. She pauses for a moment, breathing in the crisp air, her silhouette strong and graceful against the sky. Behind her, echoes of her words linger in the chamber, a reminder that the law can be bent, not by arrogance or power, but by sheer intellect and courage. Flashbulbs flicker as reporters call her name, but Michelle simply lifts her chin, offering a quiet, knowing smile. Then she descends the steps, each stride steady, each footfall a testament to the truth that one woman, armed with knowledge and conviction, can walk into the highest court in the land and leave having reshaped its very future. Fade out on the image of Michelle disappearing into the waiting crowd, triumphant, leaving behind a legacy that will ripple through the American legal system and through the hearts of all who witnessed the day brilliance refused to be underestimated. The characters Michelle Obama and Judge Amy Coney Barrett, portrayed in this story, are entirely fictional and do not represent real people or real events. This narrative is a work of creative storytelling and is not intended to depict actual individuals, their actions, or their views in real life. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel so I can continue creating more powerful and engaging stories for you. Thank you for watching.